Hi, I'm Sydney Sidhu. I'm currently finishing up my junior year in forensic psychology, and I'm here to talk to you about why you should do Cyber 119 for non-majors. I really liked how interactive the course was. During the lectures, Professor Sosa made sure it was super interactive and we had tons of class participation. And on top of that, Professor Sosa was super excited to teach the class, whereas some professors just really don't show that enthusiasm that she does. And every time she teaches, she always brings a story to relate back to our course material. One of the most challenging things was moving from an analytical perspective of how I think for psychology concepts and theories to more of a logistical side of what cyber looks at. I feel like I kind of struggled because they do show that more logistical side of A plus B equals C, whereas for psychology, it's kind of looking all around. But I do think it made me better and that it will help me in my major as a whole. I'm going to be honest, before I didn't really want to take this class. I didn't really understand why it was relevant to my coursework or my major or my flowchart. But after learning some of the topics, it was really beneficial in the end, and I am really grateful that I've taken this class. Some of the topics that I feel like related back to psych were risk management, social engineering, and access control. Risk management is the process of identifying, assessing, and prioritizing and addressing risk, and ensures you have identified and planned for risks that may affect your organization, and understanding the threats and knowing that the threats are going to be all year round, and that it's always continuing to know and have a risk management plan in action. There are 5 steps in identifying risk management. The first one is identifying risk, basically of what could go wrong, like fire, floods, earthquake, lightning strike, loss of electricity, and other utilities, labor scenarios, and transportation availability. A company must develop scenarios for each threat to assess the threats. The next step is assess and analyzing risks. Some risks pose a greater possibility of loss than others. Furthermore, not all risks apply to all businesses and locations. For example, in Montana, you don't need to worry about hurricanes, whereas in Florida, you would. Of the risks that are possible, impact will be more or less severe depending on the scenario and location. Assessing risks is about determining which risks are most serious. The next step is planned risk response, which is starting with the highest priority risk, explore potential responses to each one. With directions from your organization's upper management, determine the responses to each risk that provides the best value. The next step is implement risk response, which means to take action to implement the chosen responses to each risk from the previous step. The last one is monitor and control risk responses. Monitor and measure each can include passive monitoring and logging, as well as active testing to see how the control behaves. When dealing with risk, one thing to realize is that there is bad, but there's also some good risk, which could help out the company. When planning your risk response, the goal should not be to eliminate all risks, but instead reduce them to acceptable risks. A company should focus on responses for negative risks such as risk reduction, risk transfer, risk acceptance, and avoidance. The next one is social engineering. Basically, it's a malicious attempt to fraudulently acquire sensitive information where the intruder gains access from the victim and exploits all their information to benefit the attacker. There are many different types of social engineering, such as active social engineering, which is gathering information or gaining access to secure areas through direct interactive asserters. Passive social engineering, which means gathering information or gaining access to secure areas by taking advantage of people's unintentional actions. Shoulder surfing, looking over someone's shoulder, working on a computer to view usernames, passwords, account numbers. Eavesdropping, listening to a conversation between employees discussing sensitive topics. It occurs by having human trust. Cyber criminals have learned to carefully word emails, voicemails, text messages, and convince people to transfer money or confidential information. This is part of the efforts performed during the reconnaissance phase of a cyber attack, which means gathering information. And basically, social engineering happens in 4 phases. The first phase is information gathering, which means the attacker gathers as much information as they can with possible passwords for that right information, and individual information and become familiar and comfortable with the target and to formulate a strong relationship. The next step is establishing a relationship or rapport. This means establishing a working relationship with the target. And it could be basically anything as sharing phone calls, personal information, pictures, likes, interests. The next phase is exploitation, and this is when the attacker uses both information and relationships to actively infiltrate the target. And it could take place through divulging or seemingly unimportant information or access granted thus transferred. The last phase is the hacker's ultimate goal. Basically, it's exploit. The hacker accomplishes two important goals. The first one is the target doesn't know the attacker took place, and the second one is the attacker keeps his identity hidden. The last one is access control. This is the ability to permit or deny the privileges users have when accessing resources on network or computer. It's the process of protecting a resource that only it is used by the allowed to do so, prevents unauthorized use, just as a lock and key system on your house, or a car access controls, or like a PIN number for your bank or credit card information. There are two types of access control. The first one is physical. It controls the physical access resources such as buildings, parking lots, protected areas. Some examples are smart card use, like at Embry-Riddle. We all have our Eagle ID numbers and we just put it up to the building, and if it turns green, that means we do have access to that building. It can be used in parking lots, elevators, office doors, programmed to the user's ID, access cards, like I mentioned before. The second type is logic, which means it controls access to a computer system or network, determines which users can access the system, and once they are in the system, they always have access, and it monitors what each user does on the system. There are a number of logistical access solutions that can be used, such as biometrics, tokens, passwords, single sign-on. Overall, with these three topics, I feel like I learned a lot and that this could help me in my further use. One of the things for access control is make sure to have the correct access and authorization, since there could be confidential client files, and only keeping that password to myself and making sure that people know that only certain people can have access. For social engineering, I hope to be a clinical psychologist, and you need to gain rapport and have a good bond. Obviously, you will not be exploiting people, but just being able to gather the correct information to help them with a treatment plan. And for risk management, you always need a plan of action for whatever comes your way and whatever happens, and I think that would be important to always knowing what risk management is and always having a plan just in case something goes south in whatever I'm doing in my daily life. Anyway, I hope you join Cyber CI 119. It's a really beneficial class even for psych students. Thank you.